Great. So welcome back. For those of you who registered in both series, welcome to those who may be joining for the first time. As I mentioned, my name is Kayla Breelove Carter. I'm a licensed counseling therapist and a clinical traumatologist. Last week, we explored how our experiences are processed within and how these experiences can have an impact on the work that we do as frontline workers. We explored how our role within the front line can create instances of burnout, countertransference, secondary trauma, compassionate fatigue, and vicarious trauma. So this evening, we're going to be diving into ways we can build resilience and instances of self-care. I also encourage anyone finding these mini-series helpful to register for our upcoming 6-week Vicarious Resilience webinar for healthcare professionals. We need both good quality strategies and self-care processes to help us deal with vicarious trauma. We can also limit the extent to which we are affected by transforming the meaning that we make. While difficult and demanding, there are gifts in this work for all of us. So some of those gifts are our sense of hope, our admiration for human resiliency, our recognition of the difference one relationship can have in someone's healing and life. Empathy is both central to our work in a positive way, but also one of the critical issues in workers who develop vicarious trauma. Again, the most crucial factors in preventing the negative effects of this are self-awareness and self-care. We need to learn to choose when this is necessary for us effectively doing our jobs and when it is detrimental for us. Some general points to consider is that it happens over time and it is a process and not an event. It can affect any frontline worker, not just those doing long-term intensive work. It is specifically a result of work with survivors of trauma, regardless of the nature of this work. So in reflection to what we're experiencing globally, we are experiencing a collective trauma. So everyone is going to be impacted differently at different spectrums. But as we work with individuals, we need to also perceive that they are being impacted by this global trauma and or even other traumatic or adverse experiences throughout their lifespan. Our own personal experiences, especially of trauma, will impact on our accessibility to vicarious trauma. The organizations we work in can have a massive impact on either enhancing or inhibiting our ability to cope with the work that we do. And most importantly, we are greatly and profoundly changed through doing this work. Self-care is an ethical imperative. We have an obligation to ourselves, as well as to our loved ones, our colleagues, and our contribution to society, not to be damaged by the work that we do. Self-care builds resilience. And resilience is the ability of an individual to adjust to adversity, maintain equilibrium, retain some sense of control over their environment, and continue to move in a positive manner. When coping with vicarious trauma, it is important to know that your feelings are normal and natural, even though they may seem unusual. There's no right or wrong way to feel. A helpful tool for managing vicarious trauma and maintaining vicarious resilience is the acronym BASICS: balance, awareness, safety, intention, connection, and support. Staying balanced in a world full of chaos is not easy. Between keeping up with our to-do lists, staying informed about the world news, and taking care of our responsibilities, it's easy to find ourselves depleted mentally, emotionally, and physically. This can lead to stress, anxiety, depression, and even illnesses. Learning and practicing time management skills can help you achieve a sense of balance in both your professional and personal lives. Clarifying your inner needs versus your external needs can also help put into perspective what you have control over and what may be the things you can work through accepting or letting go. Recognizing unhelpful coping skills can help find balance in choosing coping skills that will engage your soothe system and help reduce the overactivity of your threat and drive system. So a few reflective questions to ask yourself when really exploring whether you can improve on your balance or rediscover a new form of balance that can build further resiliency are questions such as, do I have a structured routine? What are my immediate needs in this present moment? What are the most helpful needs in the present moment? Is this something that I can change, that I can accept, or that I can let go? Awareness. Know your own trauma map. Acknowledge your own history of trauma and be aware that it can affect how you view and do this work. Last week, we explored the adverse childhood experience screening, and we were able to really explore on how some of our adversities that perhaps we've perceived as being the norm, or we have experienced perceiving it as being overwhelming experiences, but how those can have a significant impact in the way that we deal with stressful circumstances today. But also other traumatic or other adverse experiences can have the same impact, whether it is through childhood or through adulthood. Making an inventory of your current lifestyle choices and make necessary changes can also be helpful. Do you get enough sleep? Do you allow yourself downtime? Do you exercise regularly? Do you eat mindfully? Try to do these things. Take care of yourself. Create a self-care list and post it predominantly in your home. Being aware of how you think and feel, including your coping mechanisms, your strength and your vulnerabilities, and most importantly, the values that motivate your goals and actions, can be the determining factor between managing symptoms leading to vicarious trauma and increasing your vicarious resilience. Becoming aware of yourself can also help manifest compassion for yourself, the situation, and others. So some reflective questions to ask yourself. What is my story? How do I cope? How do I take care of myself? What practical things tell me that my stress is building? What thoughts tell me I need some care? What emotions tell me I need some care? What physical sensations tell me that my stress levels are building? Recognizing the 4 components of safety and applying a lens of self-care can help become proactive about your needs. Doing things to take care of yourself physically, psychologically, socially, and morally are values before you are exhausted, stressed out, or sick, like watering a plant before it starts to wilt. Applying self-care in a safe way can also be reactive, doing things to give yourself a break and help yourself heal if you do get exhausted, stressed out, or sick. Ask yourself, do I feel physically safe? How am I talking to myself? Am I using self-criticism or am I being self-compassionate? How are others treating me? Do I set healthy boundaries or are my boundaries rigid and porous? What kind of expectations have I set for myself or that others have set for me? Am I making decisions based on my authentic self? So are these decisions based on my values, being mindful, or helpful for me and the situation in the present moment? Give yourself permission to fully experience emotional reactions. Do not keep your emotions bottled up. When you give yourself permission to fully experience emotional reactions, rather than shying away or trying to escape, you create a welcoming experience full of curiosity, and inevitably, you allow yourself to see these emotional reactions in a different perspective. Emotions are not the enemy. It is the only way for our body to communicate its needs or its precautions. By trying to escape these emotional reactions, you're indirectly rejecting your inner needs. Those who have experienced abandonment and rejection in their lives can appreciate that out of everyone, you would be the last one to want to inflict such pain. So why is it okay to do so with our own needs? When you set your intentions to nurture your authentic self, you give yourself the opportunity to recognize when self-care is necessary. You give yourself the tools to establish clear boundaries towards others, the work you do, and yourself. Being intentional also allows you to set realistic goals for yourself. Know your limits and accept them. So some reflective questions to ask yourself. What are these emotions trying to tell me? Am I being intentional about my actions? Am I intentionally aware of my surroundings? Am I setting intentional boundaries for my overall well-being? Connection. We're all mammals, more specifically humans. Not only are we social species, but some theorists suggest that connecting to others is a basic human need for survival. During these unprecedented times, connection is such an important part of maintaining our well-being. Unfortunately, our conventional ways to connect have taken a turn for the unknown, and for some, we feel lost in the transition of freely connecting to intentionally avoiding through social distancing. While it's best to practice social distancing, connecting can manifest in something more than what we have understood it to be. We are, after all, humans. We have had a history of adversities to which we have triumphed, adapted through resilience and pure humanity. As professionals or individuals, we must make an intentional effort to not isolate ourselves. Ways to help yourself stay away from isolation professionally includes debriefing after difficult cases, whether it be with your supervisor, a peer coworker, or a counseling therapist. Develop support systems. Start an informal virtual peer support group. Seek out a mentor or be a mentor to someone else. Seek training to improve job skills and capacity. Training will not only allow you to stay abreast of new issues emerging in the field, but will also allow you to connect with others who do this type of work. As frontline workers, we know the ins and outs of caring for others. We're also our worst critic when it comes to having others care for us. The demands as a frontline worker can be overwhelming. It's okay to let others support you. It's also okay to provide support in the form of knowledge sharing, learning and personal development, building support networks, letting others help you. You matter. Regardless of your role in this world, we all need a little support from time to time. Learning to incorporate resilience in your everyday life can also help to bounce back from major stresses in life. Using ABCs of personal resilience can help begin the work towards adding more resiliency in your life. So the A, awareness. Monitor emotions, monitor your needs. Be aware of your limits and your resources. B for balance. Set aside time for reflection. Give yourself some space and some time to play. Allow a space where you can relax and create some space so that you can be connected with family. Connections. Utilize social supports. Resist the tendency to isolate. Being aware of how our work can impact us and achieving and maintaining a sense of balance and connection in our lives can prevent us from experiencing vicarious trauma and or mitigate its harmful effects. Another helpful acronym that I find helpful is RUFF, R-U-F-F. So rest, unplug, food, and fun. Resting and sleeping are two different things. When we feel overwhelmed and the world feels like a spinning ball of chaos, we can benefit from rest, not necessarily sleep. Rest engages in quieting your brain, removing any excess noise, or perhaps even lighting, and bring the emotional volume notch a few notches down until you feel that you can breathe again. Sitting on the couch, wrapping up in your favorite blanket and settling in on a show or movie can be a nice way to relax. Unplug. If we're not already on the brink of falling completely apart, sometimes that phone call or group text can just push us over the edge. For whatever reason, some of us do not want to communicate when things feel volatile or unstable. Unplugging from your phone, email, and social media can help reduce that stress. Food. When we're struggling as caregivers and frontline workers, we may really suck at taking care of ourselves, especially as it comes to food. Society has not always encouraged us to mindfully eat. Full of different diets and regime, it can be difficult to navigate what truly healthy eating looks like for you. When we struggle and are emotional eaters, we can be left to forgetting to eat and then stuffing our faces with carbs and sugars once the sun goes down. Nutrition directly impacts our mood. Neurotransmitters in our gut are almost identical to those in our brain, giving our gut the term second brain. Being mindful of what is it I am eating, and is it helpful for me in the present moment? How will it help recharge my battery? Am I aware of what is in my food? Are all mindful questions to ask to help navigate through that. Fun. What I mean by fun is something to lift our spirits. It might be a silly meme, a funny story a friend or a spouse or a sibling sends you, or an old movie. Laugh. It does wonders for our mental health. Depending on the situation, you may be able to work through rough on your own. Other times, we may need someone to push us through the steps. Either way, the goal is to use this acronym to remember the basic principles of treating an episode of poor mental health. The most effective tool in prevention of vicarious trauma is awareness. Awareness is the essence of reflective practice. Research shows that when the possibility of vicarious trauma is not recognized or acknowledged, people may be more detrimentally affected because there are few, if any, efforts to prevent or reduce this harm. The essence of reflective practice is being conscious of what we're doing and why. Being conscious is terribly important because it's the only way that we can guarantee growth and change. If we're not conscious of what we're doing and why we're doing it, then the opportunities for change are dramatically limited. The awareness we are looking for is multifaceted. It includes awareness of our behaviors, language, thoughts, and feelings, our bodies, others around us, their energy, and their language. In very simple terms, and in many areas of our lives, if we're more aware, we are less vulnerable, and we have greater capacity to live our lives as we choose. And in relation to our practice, we are more solid as workers. There are 3 steps to developing reflective practice. Step 1 is a foundation for reflective practice. 2, a clear knowledge of our role, our purpose, and our boundaries. And 3, a good and reflective relationship with self. So let's look at foundation for reflective practice. In order to reflect on our practice, we need a base to work from, a well-developed and evolving practice framework. The purpose of a practice framework is to guide our practice by ensuring that we are conscious of what we're doing and why. Through a process of conscious reflection, we ensure integrity and consistency in our practice. The emphasis here is on being conscious of what we're doing and why, which can result in a helpful and conscious foundation for reflective practice. So the elements of a foundation for reflective practice are values and principles. What is your theories and understanding? What is your actions and your strategies? And what is that reflection? The most important aspect of any foundation is to ensure that there is consistency between different elements. When there's consistency between our values and our actions, we tend to feel content. When there's inconsistencies between our values and actions, tension usually results, and it may become a significant issue in our work and how we feel about ourselves, leading to distorted beliefs. Then there's our purpose and boundaries. Frontline workers need to know their role, their purpose, and their boundaries. There are some things that we as workers are responsible for in this work, and some things that we have no control over. It is extremely important that we are able to tell the difference. Our role is not to do the work for the other person. It is to provide the space for the work to be done, and at times to provide some compassionate guidance if obstacles present themselves. Our relationship with ourselves. We need to ensure that we are looking after ourselves and attending to our own issues. So what do we mean by a good relationship with self? We come to know ourselves, value ourselves, and accept who we are, our strengths and challenges, without judgment or inflating or deflating ourselves. We know our tender points, and we know how to care for ourselves and keep ourselves safe. We prioritize ourselves and are prepared to put the time and energy into us and maintaining our own self. We need to be checking in with ourselves often throughout the day, and you need to establish your own routine. Time to become conscious of the day at the beginning and end of the day. Look at the day and what it holds and what your hopes are for the day. Then review the day at the end and see how you feel and how you interact with yourself now. What I find can be really helpful at times is to see your day as different spaces. So from the space of when you wake up, to the space when you go get your breakfast, to the space that if you have kids and you get them ready, to the space of, getting into your workspace. If you're seeing clients or individuals, those are all different spaces. How aware and intentional are you moving from one space to another? If you are able to be observant of that, that can be really helpful to prevent baggage from one space to kind of carry on to the next. So by accepting and recognizing that this space, I am now removing myself and moving into a different space, means accepting of letting go whatever it is from that space that you're moving from. At the end of the day, it can be helpful to do something that will help you move into a new space that is about you and the other parts of your life. Explore and express the other parts of you when you're not at work. In addition to this, we need to ask ourselves the questions about how we can sustain our commitment to a higher level of self-care. Making appointments with ourselves and treating them as seriously as appointments with other people. Perhaps as regular professional supervision appointments, whether it's internally within your organization or externally or through peer support. Regular checking times throughout the day to ensure we are being mindful of how we are. And remember to breathe, trust, and let go. Breathing is a form of patience, and patience is a form of wisdom. It demonstrates that we understand and accept that sometimes things must unfold in their own time. We cultivate our attention towards our minds and bodies when we practice reflection. We intentionally remind ourselves that there is no need to react because we find the mind judging all the time, or because we are agitated or frightened or anxious, or because we have been practicing for a while and nothing seems to be happening. We give ourselves room to have these experiences and breathe. In practicing reflection, you are practicing taking responsibility for being yourself and learning to listen to and trust your own being. The more you cultivate this trust in yourself, the easier you will find it will be to trust other people more and to see their basic goodness as well. It is far better to trust your own intuition than to look outside yourself for guidance, even if you make some mistakes along the way. When we start paying attention to our inner experience, we rapidly discover that there are certain thoughts, feelings, and situations that the mind seems to want to hold on to. If they're pleasant, we try to prolong these thoughts or feelings or situations, stretch them out, and conjure them up over and over. Similarly, there are many thoughts and feelings and experiences that we try to get rid of or prevent ourselves from having because they're unpleasant, painful, or frightening in one way or another, and we want to protect ourselves from them. In the reflective practice, we intentionally put aside the tendency to elevate some aspects of our experience and reject others. Instead, we just let our experience be what it is and practice observing it from moment to moment. Letting go is a way of letting things be, of accepting things as they are. Letting go is not so much a foreign experience. We do it every single night when we go to sleep. We lie down on a padded surface with the lights out in a quiet place, and we let go of our mind and body. If you can't let go, you can't go to sleep. Most of us have experienced times when the mind just would not shut down when we go into bed. This is one of the first signs of elevated stress. At these times, we may be unable to free ourselves from certain thoughts because our involvement in them is just too powerful. If we try to force ourselves to sleep, it only makes things worse. So if you can go to sleep, you're already an expert at letting go. Now we just need to practice applying this skill in real situations as well. So I wanted to take the time to be able to have further dialogues, because I think we had some really good dialogues last week about different thoughts and trying to explain a little bit more about the process of vicarious trauma and opportunities to building vicarious resiliency and other forms of self-care. So first and foremost, it's been a pleasure sharing our team's knowledge in vicarious trauma and the skills of reflective practice. We really do hope that you've learned some new skills, or this has helped ponder further reflection. As mentioned earlier, we will be hosting a Vicarious Resilience webinar, which is a 6-session webinar for healthcare professionals and frontline workers alike. And that's really going to be focusing specifically on developing your inner skills to manage adversities, both professionally as well as personally. So now I'd like to take the moment to really discuss your thoughts, any questions that came up for you, and any further explanation you may want from me on the topic of vicarious trauma, trauma in general, or other mental health concerns. So great. So I do see a hand raise here. So Christy, I'm just going to see if I can. Oh, was that just by accident? Oh, here you are. Oh, I lost you. Just one sec. So if there's any questions, you can put them in the chat box, or there is also the Q&A that you can ask specific questions with. I know some of you had emailed CMHA early on to ask if there were specific resources. So I do have a couple specific resources. I don't have them to provide right then and there, but if you can send an email to CMHA, then I'd be more than happy to respond back with those specific handouts and resources. So I do see like the hand coming up and down, so I'm not too sure if you have a, okay. Oh. It might be easier to just ask the, okay, because you keep, sorry, I see Christy is asking, has her hand up, but you keep popping up and back down. So let me try to. Thank you. So it might be easier for whatever reason, it's not really letting me connect when you're putting your hand up. So if you do have a question, you're more than welcome to type that out. You can either type it out for the whole group to see, or you can type it out specifically to myself. And also in the Q&A. So I'm seeing that there are questions here. So do you have a strategy for talking to a supervisor if you're feeling you need to take a break because of the overwhelming at work? So first and foremost, I think that part of that conversation is always about doing the best that you can to communicate assertively and really making sure that you set your healthy boundaries. So oftentimes it can be really helpful to sort of reflect on what exactly is the conversation that you want to have and what is going to be that particular goal. Trying to also come into the conversation very neutral, because oftentimes if we have this idea that perhaps we've had experiences in the past that has not been the most helpful experiences with our supervisors in the past, it can be a little bit daunting to reach out again. But most importantly, it can also create what we call self-fulfilling prophecies. So sort of this idea of worst case scenario is going to happen, and then all of a sudden your body language is sort of projecting the inevitable. And oftentimes, as we know about communication, only really 7% is the actual words that we speak. 55% is nonverbal. So it really shows the impact that when we are not intentional about how we are feeling in that moment and we are still communicating versus words, that can create sometimes mixed messages where perhaps the other individual is taking in that vibe, and then all of a sudden they become confrontational, and then it just escalates from there. So very much in terms of strategies, if you feel very overwhelming, I would really suggest, I'm going to plug that in. We do have our counseling clinic. I do know that if individuals are feeling really overwhelmed, I'd really encourage you to register for the counseling clinic. in that situation, because I'm a licensed counseling therapist and we do have other licensed counseling therapists sort of in that rotation as well, we're also able to provide mental health notes to employers. So we've done that for a couple individuals because they have shown with some pretty acute symptoms, and for them it would have been much more helpful to have a mental health practitioner intervene. If you feel that you have enough of the skills or enough of the energy to be able to address it, then I would definitely say, you know, using your I statements and very much knowing what it is that you're looking for and communicating that to the best of your ability. And also knowing that at the end of the day, you may not get the response that you're looking for, but as long that you did the best that you can. And then at that point, if you need intervention or someone to intervene in that sense, then it could be helpful to reach out to a licensed therapist in order to discuss ways that they can provide a note or a report of some sort to help sort of navigate through that. I hope that kind of answers it. If you do have further questions, I do have handouts on communication and healthy boundary tips and assertiveness that I can also provide that may help sort of give some ideas of how to address those circumstances. So is there a set date for the 6-session webinar? That is a good question. I know there is one, but I just need to have a look here. So actually it starts next week. So it's going to be on the Tuesdays. It's going to be Tuesday evenings. It will be recorded. However, it is going to be a 6 week. So every week on Tuesday evenings, we'll be providing that. And we are working on the French one as well. So for those of you that may prefer the conversation in French, we're going to be working on just translating that. So in the chat, our CMHA partner here has marked the registration link for the Vicarious Resiliency. If you're having a hard time with that link, you're more than welcome to reach out to their Facebook page as well as their website, and I believe it is there, or you can also email info@cmhanb.ca for further information on that. And they've also linked the online counseling clinic, which happens weekly, so every single week from Tuesday to Thursday. And the appointments are set between 10 and 4 o'clock. If that time doesn't work, we do case by case that we may be able to assign a later time or a different date as well. So any other questions? Was there perhaps a particular section of the presentation that you wanted me to explain a little further, or anything that kind of caught your attention that you wanted myself to elaborate more on? So of course, you know, this presentation is very much psychoeducation in nature. The hope is that the 6-week program will actually work more into the topic of vicarious trauma, but more specifically of vicarious resiliency. So the actual ways of really developing those skills. Thank you. And again, any questions about mental health in general or dealing with particular individuals or on trauma or vicarious trauma, you're able to send a Q&A anonymously as well, or you can send me a chat directly to myself. I'll also put in the chat, again, just my email in the event that individuals need to connect. But again, you can also connect through CMHA, and they will be able to forward any questions that you might have. I'll give it a couple more minutes if there's any questions, or perhaps you're pondering quite a bit. So one other question that came in, do you have any specific handouts for a manager to work through with staff members, such as talking points or areas to ensure are covered? So it depends which approach. So are you looking more specifically on the approach of prevention, or if you've identified that there's an individual that seems to have some symptoms that are related to burnout or secondary trauma or vicarious trauma? Or is it really talking points of starting to kind of foster a different, I guess, a different culture within the organization itself? So I guess that would be my question back, because depending on the different areas that you're looking for, there could be some handouts. I know that with Breelove Counselling, we do have a sort of quick, not a training, but I guess a psychoeducational presentation on trauma-informed organizations, and that's more directed towards managers and supervisors as well as organizations as a whole. And that has some information and tips and skills to help with sort of transitioning into becoming a little bit more trauma-informed and how to better support your members. But if the question is specific to members themselves, we do have handouts on like self-care assessments. So I always encourage organizations to, or even individuals, if you want to kind of be proactive about it, of completing those perhaps like once a month, and sort of as a check-in. But the things that are probably the most helpful is also just looking at how you can create more of a trauma-informed environment. So sometimes it's about really looking at your policies and looking at the procedures of how things are actually processed through. If it's specific to an individual, you can always create sort of these a wellness procedure where you're looking at the resources you have. So there are a lot of organizations, right, that you have access to EP programs. If you're smaller organizations that don't offer that, looking at various other resources, right? We have CMHA of New Brunswick that has a lot of different programs and services available. With Breelove Counselling, we do partner with CMHA of New Brunswick to offer the free counseling clinic, as well as our free community counseling program, which offers free counseling one-on-one. So I think part of the manager is really just having that opportunity to build a safe and trusting environment where the individual can feel comfortable sharing particular things, but also noticing that at times, regardless of how much a manager puts into play to try to create a safe and trusting environment, sometimes the stigma of management can be just too overwhelming that individuals still don't approach their managers to work through. So making sure that there are alternative resources. Sometimes it can be helpful having sort of that third party, right? So perhaps it's, you know, handouts or sheets that are in the, you know, in the lunchroom, or sort of having that type of wording around the workplace can be really helpful, because oftentimes people reach out in different ways, right? So I don't know if that kind of explained it or not. I would need a little bit more information about what do you mean about working through with a staff member, whether again, it's because of they have symptoms, or because you want to be proactive, or if it's as an organization. So I hope that kind of answers it. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Excellent. I appreciate it. I'm glad that this is really helpful. And again, we do offer different types of psychoeducational webinars, as well as training for staff. And it really depends on how deep you want to go. If you want to really learn clinical skills, or if your organization is more on the awareness and support level, then being able to have trauma informed. So knowing, you know, how to perhaps be more intentional about the connections and the interactions you have with the people that you work with, whether it's your colleagues or the consumers or clients or participants of your program. So we're really here to try to build a trauma-informed community in all aspects. Yeah. So any other questions or reflections based on our conversation? So I know this evening I provided a couple acronyms that can be really helpful, from basics to ABC to rough, and really sort of explaining a little bit about how to create that the reflective practice aspect of things. So I think one key point here is that if you can be really intentional about asking yourself, what am I doing and why am I doing it, and kind of keeping on top to the best of your ability, that alone can really play a huge role in whether you are going to become at risk of all of these things or not. And even though that some are inevitable, it can still really help to navigate through and to know when to seek help, or to know when you need to kind of take a step back to do self-comfort or self-care, or perhaps just to take time off and sort of reboot. So for those of you who may be looking for more specific things, the more information you can provide in the email of the specifics, then I'd be more than happy to share some of the handouts and resources that we do have. But if there is an interest of wanting to develop some skills as an association or organization, or more of the clinical aspect, then that can be developed as well. And also think about continuing education credits for some of you that are professionals, that if that's an opportunity as well, that we can go that route as well. So any other questions as we wrap up? Thank you so much for participating this evening. I hope it was helpful. Yeah, so I'll give it a couple more minutes if there's any other questions. So so a trauma unit, and they do have specific tips and handouts like that. But I don't have any specifically, but by any means, I can curate something and send it over. But I would definitely, if you have an EAP program, I would reach out to them first. But in terms of sort of the process of a loss or a grief, that's associated to vicarious trauma, I guess it would really depend on how you do your debriefing. So if you already have policies or processes in place with your debriefing, it may be really helpful to create debriefing that are trauma informed, so that it really encompasses not only the impact on your staff in terms of vicarious trauma, but also sort of the impact that it may have on their work towards other clients. But leave that with me. If you don't mind sending me an email and jogging my memory again about that question, and I'll send you a couple of things that I have, and perhaps that will suffice. Yeah. And another one was, is it possible to get handouts? Are you asking of the PowerPoint or just handouts in general? So if it is of the PowerPoint will be recorded, so that will be accessible through the CMHA of New Brunswick YouTube. And of course, if there are any interests of doing other webinars specific to trauma that can be helpful to you, I would really encourage you to reach out to CMHA of New Brunswick and just let them know what your feedback is on that. Because at the same time, we don't want to create webinars that are not helpful or that people don't really resonate with. So by any means, as a result of these two that just came up and also of this upcoming 6-week one, these are sort of the opportunities to let us know what you think. And if there are other topics in the realm of trauma or even in the realm of supporting your clients that we can provide in the future. So I'm not seeing any other questions. I'm going to leave it one more minute, but if there's no other questions, we will end early. So I'm just going to give it one more minute. Or perhaps a couple seconds. So thank you all again for attending this evening. And for those of you that attended last week as well, thank you. So it's been a pleasure providing some insight on a topic that I hold dearly. And I hope you have a fantastic evening. And for those of you that will be signing up for our 6-week session, I'll see you then. Okay, take care, everyone. Bye.